That's the Hanson Water Department. And it's October 11th, 6 p.m. And member president, Dennis Gill and myself, with Mr. Muncy and Carol, the secretary. It's an open meeting, and it's from Environmental Partners, right?
Correct. Yes, sir.
You can have a seat up here, and we can start going right on with what you got. And we'll catch up the rest of them later.
All right, well, first I just want to thank you for inviting me to come before you tonight. I have, I'm going to come speak with you about the water system master plan that we've been working on.
Yep.
And we're about 99% done, and we have some recommendations and summary of where we are at this point. And usually what I like to do is, instead of bringing in a 150-page report to talk with, I like to talk from pictures and graphs and stuff so that you can actually visually see as I talk through it of what we've come through and why we've come to some of the conclusions that we had on some things that as a water system you need to start planning for, things you may need now, things you may need 10, 15, 20 years from now. Okay, this is what kind of master planning is trying to look towards the future. So the first thing I wanted to do is usually we typically look at projected, we look at existing water demands and needed water usage for the system, and we try to take that and see what the past trend has been, and then try to project that demands going forward to help us see how much water do you actually need 20 years from now. That's a good planning mechanism. So one of the key aspects obviously on water demand is population, the people actually using the water. So the first graph that we have shows in the historic population with the blue lines with the dots. And you can see there's a bunch of dotted lines spraying off to the future. Some of these are different agencies that project population, and we generally like to be somewhat conservative and look back at seeing what the past population trends have been. So we typically go with somewhere in the middle of the projections here. So we're actually going with the projection that's somewhere in the middle there. So it's like the lightish blue line projecting forward going up. So by 2030, you'll be just under 11,000 people in town. Whereas right now in 2017, you're probably at about 10,400, give or take. All right, so that's sort of the first thing that we do looking forward for population.
Well, actually, good evening, Bill. How you doing? Good. Right now, the population is what, 10,000? How much do you know?
Yeah, it's actually,
9.
I'm using the town census, not using the federal
Well, the
census
town
anymore.
census is still under
Yeah, it's
10,000
under
people.
just under 10.
All right, now, if you took the federal census, I went all through this, about 6 years ago. But the federal government figures 3.5 people per household. And so that, even doing that, we have Hanson's census right now still under 10,000 people. And I don't see, with all the building that's being built now, is almost to the point where the buildable land is non-existing. And I'm just guessing, it's my opinion, but I don't think Hanson's gonna make 11,000 people.
Okay.
There's another question I was just gonna ask you. Did you use some of this old map that you had to make up the new map?
We use some of the old map.
Because we found a lot of things in Hanson that gates aren't working.
Right.
And gates aren't even installed in places. And I don't know if that information's gonna be transferred to the new map. It'll really be out of date already.
What we usually do is, after tonight, we get some preliminary comments back, we'll usually issue a master plan because it's a significant document.
Right.
Issue you a draft and give you each a copy and we'll have like a large map, and generally it may take you a couple weeks to a month just to mark everything, go through the report, have,
Yeah.
generate more
And
questions.
update it.
Yeah, exactly.
Right.
You update it, you get us back comments, and then we make the plan final, and then we issue it and give you whatever other copies you need, new map, whatever. So that's things we look for.
Because in the past year, it's been longer than that, but we found that Hanson, so for some reason, over the period of years, in the last 15 and 20 years, instead of installing 3 gates at an intersection or 4, if it was a 4-way in the street, they've been putting like one tap and sleeve, or 2 tap and sleeves.
Right.
It's ridiculous. I don't know who told them or why to do it that way, but we're in the process now of going all through town and installing gates.
Yeah.
And it's costing a hell of a lot of money, whereas it could have been done for nothing, because when a developer comes in, they automatically put 3 gates in, 3 in the main line and 1 going to the development. It's a simple solution. And we've got one road, East Washington Street in town, it's about 1.25 miles long, that's got 9 gates on it. And if you look at it and figure out, there should be 20. So when you have something wrong with that certain length of road, you can't shut off, you have to shut off about 60 houses.
Right, yes.
Whereas you could shut off 8 or 10.
Right.
So,
How long have you been doing the master plan for the town of Hanson? How long have you been working on this? How many years have you had it?
This is our second time updating it since 2010. We did the
Since
first update.
2010.
So this is the second iteration that we've had. I think you had hired
Okay,
us.
how many years you have to go before you have to create another master plan?
It's usually good to do updates every 5 years. And
5 years.
I think you did when you were planning for the water main projects, you did a very quick, back of the envelope capital improvement plan update, I think 4 years ago, just to see where things stood after doing a couple of projects. So this is, I even look back at the old master plan 2010, that wasn't as comprehensive as the one that you'd get a copy of.
Okay.
Ours is including a full analysis of the whole distribution system, including
Right.
storage, which we'll get into. And also looking at the water rate structure and water financing, and projecting forward all the capital projects and see how they can fit under your rates. Okay, so we'll get into that a
Okay.
little bit. So the next key thing we look at is residential water use. You know, about 94% of your water use, you serve about 94% of the town's population with the water system. And out of that population, about 90% of it is residential. Okay, so
Yeah.
you have a very high residential population, not much commercial.
it's a bedroom community, Hanson.
So figure 3.4 shows you DEP has a limit that they like to see you meet of 65, they want each person essentially in town to use only 65 gallons of water per day. There's a lot of communities that are larger and that have lots of irrigation systems, lots of seasonal use, like say Plymouth, for example, has issues meeting this limit, whereas, you know, you yourself, and I know Pembroke, has no problems meeting this requirement. You guys have seen, you're well underneath this red line here, that means that you're in compliance and you have no issues going forward. We look at this because it's important on projecting out water use in the future, of looking at how much water people are using every day, so that we can use this historical data and project it, use it going forward. Another kind of interesting graph for you to take away is, obviously, you know, people use more water in the summer, just the way it is. It's more recreation, there's more people outside playing fun, having fun, sprinklers, etc. This graph shows you the last 5 years of water use on a monthly basis. So it shows you how you can start to see the spike in May, June, July, and August, and then it starts to tail down in September. And then as you get into October, November, December, you start to enter some of your lowest months, with usually February being generally the lowest each year. Okay. So this is just kind of interesting to go back to and see. If if you're targeting, when do I want to redevelop some wells, take a well offline, when can I get by with planning? You could pinpoint this and say, well, this may be the best month for me to do it because it's generally my lowest water demand for the month. Okay. Next is unaccounted for water. Another thing, that we use historical data to try to project forward how much water we're going to need to provide to the system. And So you have your metered water usage, and then obviously there's the unaccounted for water as well, that you have to still produce that water even though it's lost. 10% is generally the goal that DEP would like you to meet. You guys are certainly trending in that direction, and I'm not sure if you have any numbers yet for 2017. It is not 3/4 of the way done, but it looks like you could be getting closer to that 10% goal. So whatever you've been doing the last 3 or 4 years, Chip has been working on getting that number down, whether it's been leak repairs or just better source meter testing or things along those lines, but it seems to be working. So then we take all that data that we have, and we try to say, okay, what are we going to be projecting water demands to be in the future? Okay. The solid lines with the dots on them are historic max day demands, which are on the top, in the sort of cranberry brown color, and then in the darker blue with the dots is your average day historic demand. Then projecting forward in the lighter blue solid line to the right, that's your projected average day demands, okay? And again, that's based upon population, it's based upon the unaccounted for water, residential use, etc. Your green is what your projected summer day demands are. And then up top in the orange is what the projected max day demands are, okay? You can see there's two red line and a dark red line, solid lines going very straight across, okay? That is your current Water Management Act authorized withdrawal and your baseline withdrawal. Okay, so right now, your current Water Management Act permit is sufficient to meet your average day demands on a year-round basis. Okay, you don't have to really worry about that when you look at projecting max day demands, as long as you meet your average day demand on averaging over the year is making sure that you're still within that limit. Okay. Now that doesn't take away from the fact that when we talk about water supply capacity, you're kind of limited to about 600 gallons per minute of treatment capacity. There is still really a need. I'm glad you guys are moving forward with that additional source of water, trying to move forward with it, because I think you really need to have that additional redundancy. And when you do add that to your water system, you get a water management permit for that, apply for additional volume of water, that would essentially raise that solid red line upwards to help give you more capacity to meet the future demands. Okay. So now moving into water supply assessment, figure 4.1. This is where we look at what your existing capacity is, your ability to meet the demands with the current well supplies that you have. We have the same exact max day and average day historical data there in the dots. And the same projected average day, summer day, and max day demands in the solid lines going up diagonally to the right. You can see though the different red lines here now mean different things here. So the lighter red line going straight across is your current firm capacity. And again, we're in figure 4.1, 4-1. Your firm capacity is a planning mechanism that Mass DEP likes you to look at. Essentially what it means is that you're pumping your wells, but it's with your largest source of supply offline. Okay, so just in case something happens mechanically, and we've all been there, right? I mean, you always want to plan for meeting your demands with your largest well offline, just for redundancy purposes. That's your firm capacity with that offline, just over 0.8 milligallons per day. So you can see with your firm capacity, you cannot meet max day demands at this point. Okay. So if there was a max day demand in the summer, you had your largest well offline, and you had a max day, you'd be taking a lot of water from the tank. And if that well is offline for more than 1 day, you'd see a constant lowering of the tank and not
Wouldn't recover.
Wouldn't recover, exactly. All right. And that well
So
would be
where's the
running
source of this information? Is this from our water meter readings? Is that what the source of information comes from?
Yeah, the annual statistics reports, the metered water usage. I mean, a lot of information was gathered from the water department to build all the data for this report. Okay, and when you read the report, eventually, when we give it to you after the meeting, it's a big, thick document. This is just some main takeaways from it, almost like an executive summary that we're talking about tonight. you'll be able to really see, and it really explains where the data comes from, and it goes through the calculations on each of these. So your treatment capacity is essentially how much water you can pump and treat at the same time, which is all your wells running. And that's that red line. So even as right now you're having issues sometimes in the summer, pumping at about 660 gallons a minute, meeting the max day demands that are projected going forward in the future. So you could get a spike that's above, say, a 0.95 or so, that you could have an issue with meeting demands, okay, with the current storage tank that you have and the current wells that you have. Okay, so again, this is, we'll get to some of our recommendations at the end, but again, I'm happy you're moving forward with the new source, and I think you're gonna see, we'll probably be recommending another storage tank for you, which is what I'll be getting towards. Okay. Having that additional storage tank will give you additional volume of water to help supply or offset these times of need for additional water for peak hour use and max day use. Okay. I know you've stressed to me in the past that you don't, I know you used Brockton a lot last year because the other tank was offline. I don't know if you want to go.
Well, that's what we want to eliminate.
Right. Having an additional tank, because right now you guys are on the edge of needing another tank, and to the point where I think I'm confident in recommending you move forward with another 500,000 gallon elevated storage tank.
What about 1 million?
Well, you don't want to have too much water storage, because then it'll just be sitting there not being used and could run stagnant.
Well, you're predicting the population's going to increase, so that...
Not by that much, not as much as you think. If you look at your average days, we're still only projecting it to go to 0.71 million gallons per day from where it is right now. So we're not talking a huge amount here. Okay.
Well, what I'm thinking down the line, I probably won't be here, but we had problems when we were painting this tank being on water, on Brockton water. And if there was 2 million gallon tanks, you could shut one down, maintain the one of them, and still operate with 1 million gallons of water. And do you think really that it would bother by operating both tanks at once? So that you're gonna get, I mean, they're gonna go up and down, so you're gonna get an equal amount of water going each tank up and down, even though there's 2 million gallon tanks, correct?
Well, you still only have the same amount of demand every day, so the tank would move half as much as it does now. And if you've had issues with either chlorine residuals in the tank, stagnant water, having more storage could lead to those more of those. I know you don't really have surface water, so you don't really have to worry about trihalomethane formation.
No.
All right, so that's a bonus for you. But there is an issue with stagnation, just having water. I've gone to clients sometimes that before there was really a ton of water usage in the early 2000s, and then before water conservation really kicked in the mid 2000s, like Fall River, for example, has, Stoughton, another example, they have way too much storage right now, and they're doing everything they can to try to eliminate it because they have all this dead water that they don't need anymore. So we have to just be careful, when we design it and size it, that you're not going to put too much storage in. So that's something we can get into a little bit more.
Okay.
And see the calculations, but I think taking your recommendation from before and how you wanted to be more independent than relying on Brockton, the issues you ran into last year with the tank painting, and the calculations that we ran, that I think you're going to need the storage very soon. I think it's a recommendation is to at least move forward with one of the studies to do a tank siting analysis to see exactly where in town can you put a new tank and what size it should be and get some real good pricing.
One of the problems we had with Brockton's water is there's a 24-inch main that the pipe came off of. And I think they came off the pipe with an 8-inch. And then they reduced it to a 6-inch, with a 6-inch meter to feed a 12-inch water system. And as you know yourself, how can a 6-inch pipe feed a 12-inch water system? And if everybody flushed the toilet, the tank would go down because it couldn't keep up with operating. And that's what we ran into, especially when there was a water break. There was a water break, and you can't fill up the tank with a 6-inch pipe with a water break.
Yeah, that, and especially narrowing it down like that increases the velocity of the water.
Yeah.
which should then pick up all the sediment to regulation that's in pipes.
Tell us about it.
Yeah, for your water.
We're still going through it.
Yeah, so, okay. That's, leads me to getting into sort of water quality. Figure 4-2, so this is sort of combined with some of the issues you had last year, and what Chip has described to me is some dirty water complaints, which usually can be coupled with either source water quality. Seems like in your case, there's a manganese issue. In the past, I think you've tried sequestering, but you're not entirely sure. This was maybe 10 years ago or so that you tried to sequester, and it may or may not have worked. I think the manganese concentration is a little on the higher side here, so it might be borderline on whether or not sequestering would work. And if you're not too familiar with sequestering, essentially it's bonding the manganese so that the manganese stays in solution and doesn't essentially come out of the water and settle out into the pipes and settle out into and go in people's toilets and laundry, etc. So essentially you add like a polyphosphate to the water that bonds the manganese so that it stays in solution. Right? That's a very cheap alternative to having to having to do a pressure filtration plant to remove the manganese from the water. Right? That's the alternative that you'd have to look at. So one of our recommendations is to do a water quality study at the wells to identify, just through some simple jar testing and dosing of different types of sequestrant, if it would be beneficial to explore again, or another option as part of that study we do is try to identify what the cost in siting might be for a treatment plant. How much of an investment would it be? Would green sand work for the type of water quality that you have? You know, we can generally do for some clients, just to give you a ballpark idea of what you're talking about for money in a big capital investment like treatment. But generally speaking, it seems like there's an issue with there's not enough storage, not enough supply capacity, and you're dealing with water that has manganese in it. So you can't really flush hard enough, and because you can't get the water out of the wells, and you can't fill the tank because you don't have enough storage. Flushing the correct way unidirectionally would really help scour the pipe walls, but you're still putting water back into the system from the wells that have the levels of manganese that in time settle out. And with adding some bleach and laundry detergent, the aeration from the shower comes out of solution, and that's how you get the issues with water quality. So you sort of have like a threefold issue, and we're trying to address it with doing some little intermediate studies here before recommending you moving forward with very large capital investments.
Is there any point in time that the state's gonna mandate that the towns are gonna have to put in a treatment plant for the manganese and iron?
I think it's coming. I think EPA is moving towards that. 3 or 4 years ago, they actually started making manganese anything over 0.3. You had to actually start to advertise in your consumer confidence report that it's in the water at those levels. You guys are at that point. You can see from that graph there that the health advisory of 0.3 is in that solid red line going across. And I did check their CCR today, and you did have that language in there for last year. But there are more and more clients of ours, especially in the South Shore, that are moving towards treatment for manganese removal because they know it is coming down the pipeline, and they have been dealing with these water quality issues. Lucky enough, you guys have most of your wells combined in one area. It would be fairly straightforward instead of having...
Well, there's 3 wells that are higher, a little higher than manganese and iron. Chip can correct me if I want to. But number 1 well that we have is lower. Well, Chip has found that by pumping the number 1 well and feeding it with the other 3 differently, it cuts the manganese level down.
Yep.
To the point where it is low. So,
right. But there could be a benefit of you can gain back capacity without having to cut back on pumping anything if you're able to actually either sequester it or treat it, to some level. So there's an opportunity here to gain back some of the water that you may or may not have been able to pump,
right.
or have to deal with the operational issues of trying to blend appropriately.
Now, would you put that plant in or install that plant somewhere in between the wells and where the distribution line goes into the system?
Yes,
So
absolutely.
that all the water going through
Yeah, all the water.
would be filtered before it goes out into the main system?
Absolutely.
Okay.
Yeah, yeah. All right, so that's the summary on water supply and water quality. I think we talked a little bit about the water storage tank. I have some larger figures here. I know looking at a map 8.5 by 11 is kind of hard, but I probably think I have the youngest size here. I have to squint at it, so.
Yeah, I need a magnifying glass.
This figure 5.1 is areas in town that have, right now, deficient fire flows. Okay? So you can see here that project that we did last year in Montpont Street that ended at the railroad tracks generally helped the area, but there's still a lot of older water main in that other project south of the tracks on Montpont that needs to get taken care of. This map, figure 5.1, really shows that, it just tries to highlight separately where you have the lingering fire flow issues. Okay? Yeah, meaning that generally for residential properties spaced about 30 to 100 feet apart, you only need about 500 to 750 gallons per minute, about 20 psi to fight the fire in that instance. The closer the houses are together, the higher the required fire flow is. You can even get up to 1,000 gallons a minute for residential.
This was done last year?
We just did this map with the even with updating the map from the water main.
Oh, from the water main installation
Right,
on
that you've done the
Montpont
last
Street?
5 years,
Okay.
right. Yeah,
Here's my biggest issue with this thing. I'm a newbie to this department, and, everybody talks about the master plan, having this, having that. Now, how did you develop this information? That's my question, where's the information coming from? The fire flow deal now, how did you get that information?
So back about 10 years ago, part of the original master plan, environmental partners developed and built a hydraulic computer model which simulates the water system. We build it and calibrate it by doing flow testing in the field and matching it to what the model tells us. Okay, we have the tanks in there, we have the well pumps and everything. Under this contract as well, we're updating that hydraulic model. And we're able to actually put in all the pipes at the right size, the pipes with the right pipe material, the right value, we call it a friction factor, which is how well the water can move through the pipes, how quickly, without having much head loss. And also all the elevations of all the houses and all the needed water use at each of these locations throughout town. So that model is very powerful. Right? It can tell you a lot of different things. It has a module that you can run, what's called a fire flow analysis. So I can tell the model, tell me the available fire flow at every single junction, every single pipe in town at 20 psi. And it runs this iteration, and then you go and it can color code the areas in town that have the fire flow deficiency issues. Okay? And by doing that, we compare the house spacing with the ISO requirements of fire flow per the house spacing. So if you're 0 to 31 feet, I think you need about 1,000 gallons a minute. If you're 31 to 100 feet, houses apart spacing, you need 750 gallons a minute. So we take that and we look and see what the model gives us versus what's required, and then that's what we call if it's a deficiency. Okay, so we're pointing this out to you to show you that right now you don't meet the ISO requirements for providing fire flow, sufficient fire flow in these areas of town. Okay, now it could be an issue of the main is undersized. It could be an issue of the main, in this case in the southeast corner of town, that the main is like a very old cast iron pipe that could be very tuberculated. Okay, in that case, you could have a 6-inch old cast iron pipe that's tuberculated that could literally be almost
2 inches.
2 inch or 3 inch. So trying to get any water through that is close to impossible. Okay. Does that answer your question? Go for it.
Yes, somewhat. I'm just trying to, the department doesn't know where half these pipes are in town, what size they are somewhat. And so many times we go to that plan there, and it's incorrect. That's why I'm really edging on, where are you developing all this information? Have previous years, have been previous superintendents, have you discussed, have the employees of the water department going over the plan or anything? I mean, computer modules is all good and all that, but when it comes down to the pipe and whatnot, I mean, so my thing is, how is all this information put together? I mean, granted, it's all readings, computer modules and stuff, but, how much actual mechanical work goes into this master plan? I guess I'm trying to say.
What do you mean mechanical?
People are actually out there figuring things out, instead of someone sitting at a desk at a computer saying, oh, this is this is that,
Yeah.
going by what possibly could be a plan that's inaccurate.
No, there's testing in the field of all the flow testing, hydro flow testing that we do to determine what we're getting versus what flow the model gives us. So that's how we verify if the model is accurate or not. And based upon the model's only, again, as good as the historical records. So if we have an
That's
app that
another thing I'm
we're
hedging to,
constantly
because,
updating.
Chip's been superintendent 3 or 4 years, if I've been doing this 20 years, you've gone through probably 4 superintendents, would I be correct in saying
10, yeah,
that?
say 10 years, yeah.
So, I mean, my thing is, how accurate is the master plan? I don't know. And, this is a pretty good presentation now, I mean, kind of, some of the areas that you've got here, I think are pretty accurate, no question about it, we know it's south. And the biggest thing that's impressive, man, my water mains are there, I didn't know that water main was on the master plan.
Which one?
Indian Head Street to Free Street, one I've been complaining about for the last year. It's in the master plan.
Oh,
How
yeah.
come we haven't put that in the, how comes this stuff that's in the master plan don't hit the capital improvement? That's another one of my questions that, you present this plan every year, what's this plan cost, 100 grand, 150 grand?
No,
No.
50,000.
Yeah.
50,000, okay? So what action has been taken, like I say, I've only been here a couple of years, so I got a lot of questions. What action has taken place between your plan and the department? What is changed going forward as far as these master plans?
I think, not that, I don't want to answer for anybody, but we do the plan, we give it to you, you review it, you give it back to us, we issue it as final. And it's in the commissioner's hands, I think, at that point, to see exactly what you want to do for capital work. And we try, Chip's asked us in the past of, hey, I have $500,000, what can we do for that? What would give us our biggest bang for the buck? And we go back and say, okay, what project would be best for that? And we can help you work to get the project done.
No, I think what Gil's trying to
Is
say.
this your first master plan, Chip?
Yeah,
This is your first one, right?
yeah.
Okay, so the previous master plan, obviously no one took any action on it.
Well, like,
Maybe the Main Street, the Route 58 project,
Yeah.
maybe? That's the first action of the board, is that?
Or entire-
yeah, well, what we did was the idea was, we did Crooker and
Sandy.
Sandy Lane and Sandy
So
Terrace.
that was on the previous master plan, or?
Well, they were, but the previous master plan was prioritized. We went out of that priority because those 3 streets had vinyl lined AC and they had bleeders running on them. So we decided to go to eliminate those bleeders and eliminate all the testing that we had to do on that pipeline to solve that issue. That's why they got bumped up to the front.
Well, that was also because of 1 million gallons a year out of those.
Oh, yeah,
And
yeah.
so it cuts down on the water
Yeah.
usage. But we found out this last, Jerry's here too, but we found out this last, I'll say 3 months. We've got a main that runs across from the Dunkin' Donuts shop, in front of the gas station, in front of the town hall, and it runs up the hill to the top of the hill where the Catholic church is. That was a new installed 12-inch water main, that they never connected it to anything in there. They're still running services off an old 8-inch cast iron pipe.
Yeah, we've got a 12-inch main that goes nowhere.
We got a 12-inch main that's connected, that it doesn't feed any of the stuff that we want to do to clean up. And they've just found that out in the last, what, 6 months?
Yeah.
What does that mean, Chip?
That's,
Goes
that'd be the
everywhere.
intersection at the center, right above Wampatuck Pond.
Goes all the way to East Washington and West Washington.
Yeah, here we go. Right, so, Wampatuck Pond, it comes in, it comes down from High Street this way, this is High. Then it comes down, comes up here and, where's that?
Goes up to the top of the hill, Chip.
Yeah, we have that as 12 inch.
But that 12-inch pipe isn't connected to any of the services that we supply water to
So
in
it's
that area.
essentially a parallel main.
Yeah.
Yeah, it's a,
Yeah, but those can lead to water quality issues too.
I
All
think
the
it-
water is gonna go the path of least resistance.
I think it is connected to Winter Street, correct?
What? Was that?
That 12-inch pipe there is connected to Winter Street.
Correct.
So that you've got a 12-inch main coming down High Street, Liberty Street to Winter Street. But does it go by Goin Drive, or is that hooked to
Yes.
Goin?
No, it goes by going.
It goes by Goin Drive, which is a big development. And that should be connected to Goin Drive. And also that little short development across the street from Goin Drive, by Mike Chenicky's house.
Kingswood, whatever it is.
King's Landing.
Kings, yeah. That's on the old 8-inch main, correct?
Yeah, that can certainly help things out.
I mean, because 12 inches of water going through a pipe is a lot of water. And I was surprised Hanson had so much 12-inch pipe, because I know the town of Hanover doesn't. They're putting it in now. Their biggest pipe was 10-inch when I worked there.
So we talked about fire flow deficiencies. The other thing was a pipe discontinuity. I guess there's no pipe on Main Street between Reed Street and Indian Head Street. I don't know, like,
Right.
Which, essentially you have a long dead end here, long 8-inch dead end, and which essentially leads down to an area of town that has a fire flow deficiency.
Yes.
So having that tied across would certainly help out connecting water from, instead of having it come all the way back down and around, and make things a little more efficient. That would be an expensive project, I think, just it's on one of the main roads of town.
That's what one you've already figured out.
Yeah.
So that hopefully that's gonna be done this year, or next year, right?
Yeah, it's up to you guys.
Well, I mean,
Oh, it's gonna get done.
we're trying to spend the money, but we wanna do it efficiently.
Don will never get that tank.
No, I'm gonna get the tank.
They have to save you some space.
I got a gentleman here right now, says he recommends it.
So recommends that.
He recommends half of it.
Half of it, yeah, half of it.
Well, if you're gonna do half, you might as well do the whole thing. Because population's gonna increase and you're gonna need more water.
I guess mostly what I'm saying, are we getting the biggest bang for our buck by hiring you guys? Okay? I don't understand the master plan. I don't understand why previous boards, previous superintendents have really, stuck by the master plan, followed the master plan and whatnot. I can jump on chick lots for years I've been here, but the previous people, the previous organization and whatnot, from water commissioners to superintendents and everything, what has anybody done? What has anybody done the time you've been here? You've been doing the master plan. What has been done?
Well, I think it comes down to the challenges of trying to spend money versus raising rates. So, I believe in the product that I give you. I think hopefully from tonight you can see that a lot of work goes into this and that it's something that's you guys need and you need it to do. And there's a lot of work to do. And I think one of the last topics that's discussed tonight is water rates. And, we want to get some feedback tonight on how much capital you're willing to invest in. We don't need an answer tonight, but we can start to give you what the rate increases would have to be to start doing some of these capital projects in town. And it's not going to be, because you still right now generally have some of the lowest water rates around the
Right,
surrounding
well, we
communities.
have, in the last 3 years, we have raised the rates considerably.
Yeah.
Could you say that again a little bit louder?
Yes.
Well, I say it all the time, but people don't
I know,
believe
but I
me,
mean-
because everybody in Hanson thinks the water rates are outrageous. But they don't live in other towns around here, because there's other towns around here that twice what ours are.
Right.
And I think Hanson has some of the cheapest water rates in the state, to be honest with you. And it's good water, and we want to keep it that way.
And some of the section of the master plan on water rates will actually, we can actually show you your current rates versus surrounding communities and what the, if you raise rates to what percent, how that would then compare again with the surrounding communities, so you can tell that, you know, we're still in the same ballpark with others.
So I think we raised it, what, 20 the first year,
15,
15, 10,
and then 10,
10,
what, 6 months ago?
yeah.
Okay. So you have a-
So we have gone up, we've gone 20% in the last 3 years.
Because we didn't know that you just raised it 10%, because I think one of our recommendations was you needed to raise it 10% just to get back up to
Well,
where you should
we
be.
did it.
Okay, all right, good. So Gilbert, I hope, you know, when you, after tonight, you're convinced that this was money well spent. And I think after,
Oh, no, I needed the plan explained to me.
Right.
Because, you know, then, you know, everybody's, you know, talking about the master plan and the piping and everything, and, you know, I just had a bunch of serious questions
Yeah.
about it, you know,
Okay.
because we've got, you know, as far as I'm concerned, and get the camera on, this town's in serious trouble. We're in serious trouble as far as distribution, quality,
Right.
storage, everything. We're, you know, and through the years, no one has spent a dime. And now here we are in 2017, we gotta spend some serious money. So are we gonna spend serious money following our plan, which I agree with this, you know, this whole section you have here and whatnot. I mean, that's obviously, we've been talking about that and whatnot. I mean, I just, you know, I wanna be sure that we're relying upon a plan that's gonna be beneficial to the town and us. So.
right, I think utilizing the plan for your benefit is, you can point to it at town meeting and say, well, this is, we have this laid out, our consultants, this is the estimate, this is what our consultants have given us to say that we need to do and move forward. And it's, you know, I think you guys are at a crossroads. I think, you know, I think you've identified sort of 3 separate large things that have to get done for the system to make sure that you're viable for the next 20 to 30 years.
We have, in the last 2 years, we've had, oh, maybe 3 years, we have a large condo up off of Winter Street, and it connects to Liberty Street, and we have 1, 2, 3 large ones on Main Street that have gone in the past, what, 2 years, year and a half, of added revenue because of the population increase. And I don't think we've actually figured out this year what the revenue is gonna be, but this is all added revenue that we can add to it. And we're basically trying to keep our rates low, but we still wanna be efficient and run everything so that it's gonna be good for everybody in Hanson.
Okay. So the way we've kind of broken up some of our recommendations is, the first step usually in a tank is to do sort of a siting analysis to see which parcels in town may or may not be beneficial to move forward with. So we're recommending just moving forward with a siting analysis on that. There's a certain radius that you need to not only have for the tank, but you have to meet some zoning regulations, but you also have to build a tank, so you have to have enough layout for staging here. So there's some parcels that just won't work that the town may own because they're too small, so we have to.
Well, we have the one on High Street, and it's really the highest point in town. So any added tank to be done in town probably should be in the same area.
Okay.
We own all the land there. And we've got rid of Plymouth County Hospital that was there before, and they're trying to design something to put in there. But there's a parcel of land up there behind or the side of the tank, existing tank, that's being reserved for an additional tank.
Oh, perfect.
So
Okay.
that's something that we can look into,
Yep,
whether or not it can be feasible or not, but it's already there.
okay. I'd start the budget for a new 500,000 gallon elevated tank, which we just recently got costs for another client, and 500,000 gallon elevated tanks, the ones with the least maintenance, are about 3 to 3.5 million now for that size tank. So that's either the glass fused to steel tank that has very little long-term maintenance, but sometimes not as aesthetic looking. The same tank that you have now is probably a little less expensive. It's probably around 3 million. but same kind of type where you can go with the composite elevated tank, which is the concrete pedestal with the steel dome, which a lot of people, you might see them driving around, especially on Cape Cod, that are putting up now. So that's again, $3 million cost right there. On the water treatment side, we'd recommend doing a water quality study to see if you can sequester, and if you can't, and then part of that study also just try to give you what the capital cost would be for potentially moving to a water treatment plant. We're doing a couple water treatment plants now, and telling you now those costs for about 800 to 1,000 gallons per minute is in the range of about $6 million. Yours is a little smaller than that, but it depends on the type of water quality they have. So again, another big capital item.
Now, how long of bonds can you get on those?
At least 20 years, I'd
Years.
say. I
Huh?
mean, at least 20 years.
So that's a lot of money.
It's a lot of money. Yeah, but this is,
If you did something like that, we'd have to raise the rates almost double to operate. And I don't think it'd be feasible for the town of Hanson. I'm being honest.
yes, no, I know this,
It's a
other,
bedroom community,
Mhm.
and all the income is devised by just the residents in Hanson.
Right.
We have no business to speak of to get any income from. There's a couple of garages and a couple lumber yards maybe, and restaurants, but as far as getting an income from industry or something of that nature, it's just out of the
Right.
question. It's all gotta be derived from the residents of the town of Hanson.
So the option then would probably be to look at doing the cheaper alternative of trying to sequester, if you want to try to revisit that approach, because that would be much less significant investment for that facility, especially if the tank is something you want to try to tackle. You put off the treatment, go with the tank, and you try to sequester at the wells, so it's a much less investment there. Do you know, Chip, just remind me of the history there, that was before you, that was Neil, right?
Yeah,
Okay.
I don't know exactly when it was. It was a little while ago.
Okay. Well, we've done a couple studies recently that we can actually do jar testing, water quality testing, and try to write like a quick report and show you the data of if it's viable or not. And we actually can filter the water out and show what manganese is held back and what stays in solution. So based upon the different sequestrant that you use. So you can let me know. The other thing too is making sure, I know you have a flushing program right now, but it hasn't really been optimized in the hydraulic model. The hydraulic model software now is advanced enough that you can actually implement the existing flushing program you have, put it into the model, and it can make sure that it's doing the job it's supposed to. And by that I mean, is when you flush a hydrant, you're supposed to be getting velocities in the pipes of at least 5 feet per second. That's the true scour velocity, and that's how you're really going to clean the pipes. So you need to make sure that that's in fact what you're doing, and you're not just opening and moving water from different directions of town. The model can actually show you in color code if there's other velocities increasing in other pipes in town outside of the zone that you're flushing. So maybe I don't know if you ever chase dirty water in other parts of town when you're flushing in a zone, or if when you're doing it, you're pretty tight to that zone, there's not many water quality complaints, but.
Well, they're flushing now, Chip, correct?
Yeah.
And what they're trying to do, and Jerry's here too also, they're trying to do short areas of pipe a night, and just on one pipe. And as far as I can see, it's working out.
Yeah.
But that is something we had talked about in the past, about how it may not be a bad idea to try to optimize that and get a different opinion on making sure that the flushing is working. But if you guys are happy with that and you think it's working, it's fine. Some of the other recommendation is mostly water main replacements. We have about $3 million to fix the fire flow deficient areas. That's about 14,000 feet of pipe. That's phase one. These other main replacements, transmission main continuity, that's another 16,000 feet. Then you have mains a little later, final line asbestos cement replacement. You still have 70,000 feet of VLAC in the system. You have about 5,600 feet of 2-inch water main. And other sections that should be replaced in the future, but they're a lot lower priority. But as of right now, the master plan is recommending about $30 million worth of work, and it would be about $33 million worth of work if you include the water storage tank, but no treatment plant. And that's over a 20 to 25-year lifespan, okay? Now, our job is to try to point out to you and try to schedule these for you. Obviously, you see that number, there's no way that you're gonna be able to tackle that in any fashion. But the first step is always take the first step and try to identify which is the highest priority for the town and for the water department. And if that's water quality and if that's water storage, then you know a couple of the first projects that you should take a step with. And those obviously impact water rates. And we looked at, generally speaking, and the take on about, with borrowing, Donald, for over 20 years at a certain interest rate, if you were to take on about $1.5 to $2 million worth of capital projects, there's about a 15 to 20% rate increase. And that may be before you had already raised 10%, so that may be an additional 5 to 10% over what you've already done to pay for the $1.5 million to $2 million worth of projects. Which doesn't get you that tank, but it gets you the first. If you were planning on doing some of those water main improvements, it would get you on the hook of being able to do that. So, that's the big story. That's what we have. We have a very thick document that will give you a lot more background on how we came to this. I think, Gilbert, you might get a lot more background on master planning after reading through that. And I can, we can submit that to you, and then you can review it and request that I attend another meeting. I can sit and go through any questions that you have based after you've been able to read it in more detail. But I can certainly open up to any
The
questions.
master plan that you've developed, okay, as the town previous years utilized any of the services that your company provides, not knowing what your company actually does, in conjunction with the master plan, suggestion of the master plan, have you guys been hired to follow up something that's on the master plan with previous boards and whatnot?
In Hanson or
Yeah,
another?
in Hanson.
Yeah, I mean, the water main project for Montpauset and Crooker.
Yeah, the one that we just did last year.
Okay, what other things do you do as far as, enforcing, I shouldn't say the word enforcing, in conjunction with the master plan? Like say,
They can,
We do everything. Yeah.
do it all.
Right. We're full water system, we do wastewater, water systems, drinking, stormwater, transportation. We do work in town on,
You work for the
highway department, there's lots of, our firm is about 60 people, we're a full service firm, we have offices, all over the place, but every project that I've recommended, I've done and worked on before. The new tank project, the water quality study, new treatment plant, we do everything, flushing programs, modeling.
I got a question. If you put in a 500,000 gallon tank, and we're using 500,000 gallons a day, but you have to operate off that tank to service and maintain the first tank, is that gonna work?
So your question is, if the first tank goes offline again, can you float off of that 500,000 gallon tank? The answer would be yes in the spring and fall. If you get into a summer situation again, it'd be tricky. But it would be a lot easier than what you went through already. And generally tank paintings take about 4 to 6 weeks.
3 months.
Probably ran into some issues there, but,
Well, it happened.
yeah.
That's what I'm asking you.
Right.
I mean, if it won't work on a 500,000 gallon tank.
The only issue you run into is the ability, say if a fire would happen, and if you only had the 500,000 gallon tank, you might have to go and open up a Brockton or emergency interconnection to help supply the water. to
Well, that's
fight the
what I'm
fire,
saying.
right?
You can't feed the town with a goddamn 6-inch water main. It doesn't work out. We had a water break on Azalea Road, was it?
Geneva.
Geneva Road, down off of Pleasant Street. And we don't know how long the water ran, but I guess a woman, a resident in the neighborhood, got up and saw the water bubbling at 3 o'clock in the morning, and she went back to bed. And in the morning, I guess people were calling from High Street and a few other high places in town, where's the water?
Right.
And then to feed the town back with a 6-inch water main, it just won't work. And that's why I question whether or not a 500,000 gallon tank would be big enough, and whether or not you can control the bacteria or the chlorine and so forth with the operation of 2 tanks. The population has increased, like I said, I don't know how many people have been, but I know there's a lot of condos have been constructed in the last 2 years that weren't here before. And the water usage is going higher, even in the wintertime, because of the fact everybody has to use water. And I just don't know whether or not you could factor in something in the model, whether or not you could find out whether or not 2 tanks would work in Hanson of the same size.
The model can be utilized to put in different size tanks and show you how the tanks would operate with the demands that you have and the wells that you have now. With the way it looks existing right now, how the tank fluctuates, or with a 500,000 gallon tank, or with another 1,000,000 gallon tank, it'll be able to show you how much the water would move. The issue I have with a 500,000 gallons, putting another full 1,000,000 gallons in, is you're dealing probably on an everyday basis, not so much in the summer, but probably in the winter and the spring and fall, of not being able to move as much water in those tanks and have more stagnation. The older the water gets, the more water quality complaints you're gonna get, and you're gonna be dealing with that every day versus a 6 to 8 week period, once every 15 to 20 years, that you may have a fire, that you may need a larger tank. I guess that's my point, you may have, so that's where I'm coming from. I think if you're serious about the tank, instead of a recommendation to master
Well,
plan,
I
would
don't know
really-
about anybody
I would
else.
really go back and hammer out the details and actually show you how long that tank will last, at what demand, what population, and, it could show you a better graph on how much that extra 500,000 gallons could take you. Yeah.
Because our 4 wells that we're operating out of now are in the Taunton watershed. And we're in the process of trying to locate another well in the town, but it's gonna be in the North River watershed. Now, whether or not it's feasible, it's gonna be able to be produced as an active well, we don't know. But we are in the process of doing it, because it'd be better for Hanson to pull out from 2 watersheds than it would be from 1.
Right. Yeah.
So, I'm just trying to bring up all these
Yeah.
if, ands, or buts.
Where's that other source that you're looking for right now?
It's up off of East Washington,
Okay, good.
in East Washington, State Street,
Mhm.
Old Pine Drive. It's all conservation land.
I think it's this area right
It's always good to have.
We call it Area 5.
It's always good to have your sources sort of spaced out.
Well, this is actually one on one end of town and one on the other.
Right, that's not a bad situation.
Which would be a good situation
Right.
if it pans out.
Right, yeah.
But we don't know the manganese or iron quality or anything in that area, which after a well is drilled, we can find out. But having the capacity increased even a couple, 300,000 gallons a day from a new well in a different watershed, it's gonna help the town of Hanson out.
Right. But what's the status of that supply? Is it still a couple years away? Are they?
Well,
yeah.
we're in the process of trying to get the road in so we can drill the wells. We were hoping to be drilling the wells this fall, but
Yeah.
the way it looks like, well, maybe we will, I don't know. It's in that process now. We've got to go through conservation, because we're gonna be cutting some trees to put a road in to be able to get into it.
Yeah.
And you've got to have it to sustain a 40-ton drill rate.
Yep.
And We're gonna have hearings for the public in that vicinity, in the area, because it's behind the homes, and it's on conservation land, and we're working closely with conservation. Because nowadays, you can't just do things like you used to do 40 years ago.
Yeah, all the information's on the cloud. That cloud, the Hanson cloud, it's got
Which cloud is that?
the Hanson.
The one that went over yesterday?
Yes. I don't know if this would be beneficial for you to review. This is actually what's taking place. Look at that. I mean, I think,
Okay, so you guys are still years
we're in the
away.
beginning.
Years away.
I'm
That's
saying
what I
years.
tell them, it's about 5 years away.
Yeah, 3 to 5 years. and then you sort of
Absolutely,
prep.
yeah,
You know, we're gonna drill next week,
not happening.
okay?
Even if you
This is
drill,
why-
the permitting process of the new supply is
DEP
three
is years.
years easy.
Exactly.
No,
This
my
is why I
construction.
grill people, this is why I wanna grill people, I wanna know what's going on.
Well, I told you 5 years probably down the road before that is developed.
I had another question, I lost my train of thought. Answer pretty much all my questions. I'm glad it's-
Well, I think it'd be proper to some way is to put in some type of a tank. We can put it in before the well is, so that we can have the capacity. Or whether or not, if you're gonna hook up to Brockton, like I told you, it's gonna cost you a lot of
Well,
money.
you know something, I think, we shouldn't go with another tank load of source, our wells are not up to speed as far as filling another tank.
I know,
So you open up the 6-inch line from Brockton and blend, and maybe that's something we might end up doing.
Well,
Well-
just think about it too, you don't need more water to fill another tank. You're only still gonna pump the amount of water that,
that you
yeah,
can.
you're gonna,
That's
it's gonna be used every
right.
day. So it's gonna obviously pump more water to fill it at first. So your existing wells will still be good. And another tank will just give you essentially the buffer of the.
A little bit more
demand.
capacity in an
Exactly,
instant.
right. So instead of your wells turning on and having to run 24 hours a day. to
It
keep
won't
up,
be.
It won't,
No,
it'll
no.
help, because more of that will be coming from the
No.
tank.
But the thing about it is, the 3 months that we were off of Brockton, on Brockton, it cost us $330,000. Because they charge us $3.81 a 1,000 gallons. And I had Carol and Leanne go back for like December, January, and February. Of course, it was in the winter months. But for 3 months of using our own electricity to pump the 4 wells to supply the same amount of water, it was only $30,000. So if you're gonna have to go on Brockton water, you're wiping out the $1.3 million that we have for income. Because you won't be able to do anything. That's why I really don't wanna have anything to do with Brockton. I know too much about Brockton, and Brockton themselves are gonna be in trouble in a few years if they don't do something right now. And
No, we're in trouble.
they aren't doing
now,
it.
though.
Well, I know Gil, but,
Right now.
well, we aren't in trouble. We're pumping the water and we're maintaining water. And I think they're doing a good job flushing. They're going out tonight, Jerry,
Yes.
continuing down, heading towards Wampauset.
Heading up Franklin. Heading
Going to
towards Ashland.
Franklin, up the hill towards Elm Street.
Correct.
Thank you.
You're welcome.
Because I think that's one of the lowest parts in town where the water settles.
I mean, I got a couple questions about the master plan, if I can chime
Yeah,
in.
go ahead.
The current master plan that we have now, how long is that good for?
Usually you have to, it's policy to sort of update it once every 5 years.
Every 5, it's on 10?
No.
Every 5?
Yeah, at least do an update to the capital improvement plan, because costs change, material costs, et cetera.
Okay, even like the new current master plan you guys are working on, I mean, how much more do you tweak? Because we've got no inside info, like, I mean, we know a lot out in the field, and no one's even approached any of us to, ask us questions about it, so we're just kinda curious. We see you guys out there, but, no one's really, asked us any question about the infrastructure, and we're just curious why.
Well, we're gonna issue it as in draft form, and usually, when we issue it as draft, we'll have the mapping that will give a nice big map that we usually ask them to mark up so that we can get input on it.
Okay.
Alright.
And also know you're gonna
Has
do
that ever been
a,
done before? You've been here 16 years of Friday, whatever it was.
Was that?
Has it ever been done before? That's my question to him. How long?
what was your
did you
I'm
do it?
sorry, what was your question?
Well, you know, how much input did the department have?
Never. Not from me being here, no one's ever came up to me personally and asked me about the infrastructure in the field. It always went through a superintendent.
Yeah.
And, there's like that 12-inch main that's been going around for years. I think the purpose of the point, and I'm just guessing, they upgraded the 8-inch to a 12-inch, and probably for money reasons, they never attached the services and the fire services onto that main. So we get two mains basically running parallel. One, basically just a transmission line, and the other one that should be obsolete, that should be shut down. So could be a huge water quality issue.
Right.
And, it's stuff that we know in the field that, if you guys give up an analysis, we'd be like, hey, well, what do you guys think about this? Even have like a couple of meetings with the guys in the field and pick everybody's brain, because everybody has different inputs and everybody, sees different things, and, to have like a powwow and get everybody together, and, we could probably hammer this thing down to a pretty good master plan, and put everything on there and kind of prioritize what we think should be prioritized. The Reed Street to Pleasant
Well,
Street to Main
Pleasant.
Street. That should be, a good loop. That would be a good water
I
quality,
think that can be fit in.
resolve. But there's things that we know
It's
that,
gotta be done.
we should all have a little powwow about it,
Sure.
Yeah.
Yeah, we can let me know how many copies of the master plan you want, and I can issue it as draft. Give everyone who you want an opportunity to review it, and then we'll come in.
Yeah, I think that would be good, because you get, a lot of these guys, we've been here for years, and we all have different inputs, and to get a powwow together, we get everybody's input, get the board involved, get you guys involved, just have one big powwow and kind of lay it all out there, where they can get actually a really good master plan to kind of prioritize, what we think in the field should be, take the ball and run with it. And I know money's, we're getting deeper and deeper, because, we gotta prioritize, what should be done. And then another question I had about, grants. Is there any grants out there that we can actually, like Dawn wants a new tank, is there anything, something to that effect that we can get a ball rolling out, or even hire a company to get a ball rolling on that, to get it, quicker and, get the biggest bang for the buck?
There's two different typical funding agencies. One's the state revolving fund through DEP, and that's usually you can sometimes get up to a 30-year loan. Mostly it's a 20-year loan. With the
I've been
low
told I
interest
can
rate.
get a 30.
But that generally goes by need and by a ranking system. And it generally
Like
goes
population
to-
of the town?
Yeah, it usually goes to New Bedford for a large, Fall River for service, lead service replacements, because that's a hot topic of the day because of Flint, Michigan. I worked on a big project in Eastham building a water system from scratch. That's 130 million. That got a lot of funding because people were on wells that had very high nitrates and water quality concerns. So, you can file like a form to apply for the permit, but it's a big process to try to file for that. The other one is the USDA Rural Development Program. They generally offer grants and loans. It goes by median household income, and it's actually
Right.
it's actually very.
Hanson's real low.
It's
And
a lot,
they
I'm not
should
sure
be
what
able to
you know it
get
is,
it.
but it's, we can ask the regional supervisor in Wareham, because we get clients that ask that thing all the time. But we just talked to him for another time, his funding is so up in the air right now because of the Trump administration. He's got no directive right now on any, even if he's gonna get any grant or loan funds for the next year, but if that's something you want us to look into, we can look at what your median income in town is and see if you qualify at all for a loan or a grant through USDA.
That's what you did, try to do for.
Well, the last letter I got from USDA, from Amherst, was they told me to sue Brockton, because I think it was outlandish to tell a town to sue another town, because we had to install a water main on a street that wasn't a town street, and the 6 residents on that street are paying for it out of their own pocket over a 20-year betterment loan,
Oh, jeez.
which is wrong,
Yeah.
okay? The way the government in this country spends money, we started out, it was gonna be $205,000 to do the job, and the contractor and the person that pulled the pipe through the ground for us sharpened their pencils, and they came up to, it was $167,000 that the betterment loan was put out for the sick residents that they're paying back over 20 years. And I've been many, many times down to the Wareham one with Ron Coates that had one down there. And I had him one time flabbergasted, and I backed him right into the seat because of the information that I gave him. And I still got stabbed in the back. They wouldn't give me any money. That's the letter I got back from him, from Amherst, that he didn't make the decision.
Yeah.
I'm upset about it, I really am, because there's no need of this, of the residents having to pay for it themselves, when our government has plans to supply money to people. This is a bedroom community. Good
Right.
Lord, I mean, they shouldn't have to pay for the water main. Their wells were all contaminated because of sewage, because of Brockton raising the damn water table up and down. So they couldn't use their wells. It was wells. And the road's not accepted, so the town couldn't put water in there. I'm working on something now to go to the Attorney General. I don't know whether it's gonna help or not.
Just to answer your question a little more, because you know how the interest rates have really dropped the last, well, it's been 8, 10 years or so, but
Right, now they're creeping back up.
they're creeping back up a little bit, but in general, in the last 5 or 10 years, the towns have actually found that they can borrow at about the same term and about the same rate as they would get through the state,
Right.
without all the paperwork and additional loopholes you have to go through to get the grant funding. You know, sometimes you have to provide a certain amount of cash up front, or you have to hire a minority or woman business enterprises, which are more expensive.
Right.
So most
I know, what was the state, like maybe 3, 4 years ago, they were gonna finance, Project Shovel Ready to go,
Right,
and it was
yeah.
gonna be, there was grants for that, that would basically get people back to work.
right.
So I don't know if there's anything left over from that, I mean, there's all these weird things that kind of like a company or some, maybe you guys, that they know all the loopholes, they know all the little tricks that kind of, give
Yeah.
the
That
people in Hanson a
ARA
little
money,
break.
that ARA money went through the USDA, and they were only giving it out based upon your eligibility through USDA.
Right,
Because that was when Obama took over, I think in 2008 and 9.
right.
I think that-
Yeah, try to get people back to work,
Right,
that was kind of like
So, all right,
But there is a little bit of groundwork, if you're serious about the tank, that can happen to prep you for a better estimate for if you go to, say, Springtown meeting or whatever. So if there's anything here that you need to get, or you want more information on or more detail on, just let us know.
well, we've got you've got the thing for a tank for what, 3.2 million?
Yeah.
That's a 1 million gallon one. So,
Half million.
no,
We got a price
no,
on
we
it.
got
Oh,
a,
okay.
we got a price for a 1 million gallon, a 3.2, a glass line one.
Just, yeah, I got one for $500,000 for 3.2, but you gotta make sure that they give you prices without concrete, without site work, without engineering,
Right.
without anything, so just gotta,
Right,
Be
but
careful,
like I
yeah.
told you, we
Yeah.
have the land and
yeah,
we've got to have somebody look at it and see if
Right.
it's feasible. But I think High Street would be the best place for it because of the height of the water. Both tanks would be at the same water level, and it's like the center of a cobweb. High Street is, and you're distributing your water, it's about at the center of town,
right.
roughly.
And if there's any water main work that you had, any mention that potentially move forward, just let us know if you need any budget numbers for moving forward on different streets or sections or limits. If you have,
Well, the main one's on Main Street between
Yeah.
Reed and Montponton Street.
yeah.
What pays them, Chip? What line pays them?
Pays environmental partners?
Yeah, that
It-
water surplus? or-
No, it was, well, yeah, it came out of surplus at town meeting. It was an article for the master plan.
Right,
How much was that?
50,000. That was, what, a couple of years ago, I think?
Last
That-
winter,
Oh, last-
winter, yeah,
fall?
yeah,
Yeah. Last October.
yeah.
So, let me ask you this now. Part of the master plan, did you do the testing, manganese testing, for nothing?
What I do for nothing?
Yeah.
No.
I mean,
Would you
got
work for nothing?
Yeah.
Here we are.
Hey,
We do work
35 years
for
on the
nothing.
Board of Health for nothing, now
Yeah.
3 years here for nothing, hey, what the heck, you know? Just couldn't,
Yeah.
could try it. you
No,
know?
I volunteer at night too, but, not during the day.
Well, all our work is voluntary.
Man, I think that's something we gotta look into in the future. We know it's gonna be an issue.
And all of these things we're proposing too is just to get deeper into the issues
Yeah,
so that you
Yeah.
can make a smarter decision on the
Right.
capital investment.
Okay.
Like, water quality study, can we solve it with sequestering? Do we know we need treatment? Okay, we know we need treatment, we're gonna put that off, obviously, tank.
Well, some
look at
point
the
in
site,
time, it's gonna
Right.
come to the point they're gonna have to have it.
Yeah, gonna do something.
Right. And maybe if they do mandate it from EPA, maybe there could be, hopefully, they realize how many communities that's gonna impact, maybe they could have some special funding available just for that, or maybe you would score higher on the funding availability if it becomes a mandate and you're out of compliance with it.
All right,
very good. My questions have been answered, I'm pleased.
I don't think you're pleased.
I'll second that.
Maybe.
well, I'm sure there'll be another meeting.
I'm sure.
Yeah, no problem, anytime you need me, I'm here. Again, this is what we do. If we're, we have a lot of clients in the South Shore, we know the community. So if there's anything else you need, just let us know.
Oh, we will.
We're here for you.
We appreciate you
Thanks.
coming in.
Okay.
You guys want any other copies? You want me to copy from Mike?
Yeah.
Yeah, I'll leave a copy for Mike.
And I'll leave these maps here for you, okay?
Mhm.
Do you have a card or anything?
Yeah. And is there any, I can talk to you after about how many copies you want.
Oh, okay, yeah.
Does everybody have my card? Thanks. You know where to reach me.
Yep, thank you.
I have met you before,
Yeah.
a long time ago. All right.
I've been to a couple-
Myself.
I've been
Yeah, you've been here
Yeah, I've been a
a
couple
couple
of
times since
All
I've been.
right, okay.
Have a good night.
Thank you,
No problem, everyone.
Thank you very much, appreciate it.
I'll talk to you tomorrow, we'll try to fine tune the fire flow stuff.
Yep, no problem. Sounds good.
Thank you.
Thank you, have a good
Thanks a lot.
night.
Good night.
Bye-bye.
Good night.
Now we'll swing it on to the superintendent's report.
Is somebody out there with you?
Yeah, can we go to, is Joshua?
Yeah.
Oh, can we,
Yeah, come to the board.
Want somebody here?
Yeah.
Oh, yeah, bring him in.
What's executive
I didn't,
session?
huh?
It's executive
Executive
session.
session?
We gotta go in executive session?
Yeah.
When he gets here, or I'll do it now? Want to go into executive session now? To study strategy with respect to collective bargaining or litigation, if an open meeting law may have a detrimental effect to the government bargaining or litigation positions. And I'll entertain a motion.
So moved.